Awesome, awesome, awesome. Everyone, we're about to go ahead and kick off tonight's talk, tonight's fireside chat. So I'm going to read Rony's bio. It's very extensive. Don't read all of it. Don't read all of it. Thank you for saving me. All right. So Rony is an inventor. He is a successful entrepreneur. He's a founder, pioneer, visionary leader, and a strategic advisor with a diverse background in computer-assisted surgery, surgical robotics, AI, computer graphics and visualization, sensing, advanced systems, media and animation, spatial audio, spatial computing, and XR. He has a strong intellectual property background. So if you have any questions about your patents, your trademarks, all of that, and how to create a billion-dollar valued company around that, he's your guy. All right. Rony is currently the founder and CEO of a new creative tech stealth incubator called Sun and Thunder. And its first spin-off company, SynthB Inc., Rony directed his first animated short film, Yellow Dove Aftermath, which he has premiered at film festivals around the world. Rony? Gotcha. Thank you.
Guys,
All right. So how's your night going so far?
that's great.
All right, all right. So tell us, so this is a curated room of successful entrepreneurs, many of whom have raised their seed rounds, raised their Series A rounds, and we just want to make sure that they have advice from a person who has exited a company, who has raised, what, $2.6 billion?
In that region, yeah.
In that range, in that region? Okay. For a startup organization that has created and transformed the way we consume AR and VR experiences, right? So tell us how do you think about a business and how to transform society? Because I think that you think bigger than most people. Like, so how do you go about thinking about your startup and thinking about scaling it and raising the money from successful VCs who have a proven track record of investing in companies like yours?
That's a great question. So something that I see less in Miami, but we should see more of and more of around the world, but has been more concentrated in Silicon Valley, are people feeling free to think really big. Right, but I didn't start my companies in Silicon Valley. I started at I was a student at University of Miami, and nobody told me you're not supposed to do that here. But I think a lot of folks may be growing up, and you're told to think small and think constrained. There's no way something crazy could happen, and you put brakes on yourself, and your mind is locked in. So I think the first step as a founder is to unshackle your mind and to just go really big. How big is my idea? What is the unlimited version of my idea? How big can I make that? And then just really dream that out. I don't know how many founders really take the time to dream that out all the way. But every company I ever did was started completely insane. Really far out dreams. And then you're like, okay, how do I bring that to starting point, not limiting what it could become, but how do I start climbing that mountain? And I think some of the best investors in the world are looking for those people. They're looking for something that, my God, that's so big. If that hits, that's unlimited scale, right? Because if the max version of your idea is like 3 times their money, they're going to probably pass or look for something else. They're looking for the people that have like huge ideas and you can execute, and somehow they believe that you are never going to give up, right? So it's just like stubbornness. You have to be like almost insanely stubborn. I don't know how many founders in the room are insanely stubborn. Yeah, you just have you have to be sawed in half, your arms cut off, and your hand is still crawling on the floor. That level of like never giving up, I think the best investors I've met, like they know that you have that in you, like you are never stopping, right? And I think you have to dream really big, never stop. I think that's a starting point. Now, you also need people around you who are like rational, right? Because as the founder, you're completely, you're just lost, right? What are you doing? This is totally not rational. But you need some folks around you that are rational, but are not stopping your dreams. And I think that's really hard to build that team of people who believe in your dream, but hey, I will help you execute. I will be a counterbalance to that. Let's take it into steps. And I'll just give you a quick anecdote, and then Derek can throw the next crazy question at me. But I met Jeff Bezos earlier on before he became that like steroid kind of dude that he is right now. I hope this is being recorded. Anyway, hey, if you watch this, Jeff, you're cool. But I did, and he was kind of this nerdy guy, and no one was talking to him at the time. This is like, because Amazon was like kind of falling out of favor, and everyone thought they were just going to die. And so he sat down at a conference, and I got to talk to him, which was kind of cool. And he said he had this huge vision for Amazon, but no one understood it. So he just cut it like little slices of bread, like infinitely long loaf of bread, and he would just share one slice at a time. He goes, people don't understand what I'm doing, but he had it in here. And he goes, I just dole out one slice at a time. And then over 20 or 30 years, looking back, you're going to see that he really did think about the whole thing. He really understood where it was all going. And if you look at Amazon over the last 10 years, it's just blown up. But it took 10 years to get to the point where it could blow up for the next 10 years. So he was thinking out 20, 30 years. And one of my friends was a board member of Amazon for a very long time. He says, every year for the first decade, most of the board and investors wanted to fire him and get rid of him. And just a couple of people who believed in him protect him. You're crazy, you don't know what you're doing. They just try to get rid of him all the time because he had such big ideas. And his whole team thought AWS was a bad idea. AWS is one of the most important things in the world, the biggest drivers of Amazon. And his own team said this is stupid. So he took a guy called Andy Jassy, he made him a fellow, and he incubated him. Now Andy Jassy's running Amazon. So that's what it takes. You have to be so committed. You have to think really big, think really long. But those slices of bread that you got to dole out, I think are incredibly important because no one outside of a very small circle of your friends will understand your whole big thing. But they'll understand that one step at a time. And don't let people confuse your one step at a time with your really big vision. I don't know if that helps. But
Yes, it does. It does. So, like, the story that you told when we first met about your journey in Mako and how you actually grew that into a successful company and exited. Tell us a little bit more about that. How did you come up with that idea? Tell us about your early team. Tell us about how you were able to secure the partnerships and the agreements in order to turn it and transform it into a successful company and exit.
So who knows University of Miami? Everybody knows UM, right? So I was a graduate student at UM, living in my now wife's grad student apartment that was really rinky-dink. It was a couple $100s a month, deep in student debt, and we're living on like 19-cent, 29-cent Taco Bell bean and cheese burritos. And I'm like, I got a job offer at a really good company. I think it was like a J&J company. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to start a company in our crazy, near broke, deep in student debt, and it's going to be robots that are kind of like Star Wars robots that do surgery. And I can't believe my wife is still with me because I like turning down a job like I could have had this amazing job instead of extending grad school because we could kind of live almost free on campus and avoid like the debt coming after once you graduate, like all the bills are. So we're kind of like, how do I extend campus as long as possible? And I started talking to anyone, and I think hundreds of everybody, doctors, investors, VCs, says that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. And then we met one surgeon, I won't mention his name, but we met one surgeon who thought it was a stupid idea. 2 weeks later called me up and said, I'll give you $50K to start the company. I thought that was a big deal. Like, oh my God, $50K to start the company. Now, how the hell we're going to build a robot with $50,000? But that kind of got it going. But think about it. Like, this is a company that got acquired for close to $2 billion. And we're in a broke-ass apartment on the UM campus in deep debt. And I don't come from a wealthy family. My dad was like dirt poor. My mom was dirt poor. None of us had anything. They helped out by like, we'll put $1,000 into your new company. So it was like, how are we going to figure it out? So it was very irrational to do this company. Nobody thought robots were a good thing. In fact, there was a huge effort IBM and a number of partners created this thing called RoboDoc. It was a complete failure, just utter failure. People lost like a couple $100 million on it. So in the wake of that, I'm starting this company, a broke-ass college student who has no idea how to even do it. I didn't even know I needed to file a corporation. I think it took a year before I realized you had to file a corporation with the state. I just thought we made a business card and like we were in, like, you know, that's what we needed to do. So it just shows you could start totally clueless from kind of nowhere and fight your way forward. And like we were literally rejected hundreds of times. And in that doc who put in the first 50K, I got another grad student to join in, and we were in his office, like kind of living in the back room. Like if you imagine like that closet back there, that there's like, we were in the back closet kind of working on this thing. And it sort of had that feel to it in the beginning.
So how did you create a team with the knowledge to create the robotics and the software and all the different components to make this happen?
So I think there were a couple key moments. I'll describe those key moments. One of them was I thought MIT would never talk to me. But there was a professor at Northwestern named Michael Peshkin. He was running this thing called the Lab Intelligent Machines, and I read about him. And I call him up. I said, hey, I've got a robot company. He's like, oh, cool. I know you're doing some research in your lab. We'd like to partner with you. So he scraped up more student debt, got a plane ticket, go to Chicago, meet Dr. Peshkin, and he has a grad student, and I have a grad student also working for me. I'm like, hey, do you want to join the company? He's like, sure. He was a MacArthur Genius Grant guy, but like, nobody seemed to care about robots and surgery. It was like nobody was knocking on the door. Nobody knew this would be a multi-billion-dollar company, you know, not that many years later. So we show up and he's like, yeah. So he joined the company and we had kind of made a really rinky-dinky prototype and he had a really rinky-dinky prototype. Let's put these two things together and that'll be the start of our company. And it was really ugly looking. It was just horrible and this thing was going to not really go anywhere. And he says, you know, I have a friend at MIT and he's got a really cool robot that throws baseballs. And it was called the Whole Arm Manipulator. It's this robot that threw baseballs.
The robot trio.
What is?
The robot trio.
The robot trio. So anyway, so he says, go out to MIT and meet this guy. So I meet this guy named Bill Townsend. He's a PhD student who just graduated and the real genius guy, he invented this robot based on Leonardo da Vinci's thinking about how you design robots. No gears, all tension cables. Really kind of a crazy revolutionary thing. MIT thought, cool grad student project, stick it in the closet. And Bill's like, oh my God, someone's interested in my robot. What are you going to do with it? I said, we're going to make a surgeon. He's like, no, you should make a janitor. I'm like, no, make a surgeon. He goes, no, janitor. I'm like, you could have all the rights. All I want is medicine. In fact, I just need surgery. He's like, that's so stupid. I'm like, I just want surgery. So we licensed this robot from MIT for very little. 3 days later, a giant company in the West Coast tries to license the same thing. That company was called Intuitive Surgical, which is now a $100 billion company, also building a rival robot system. And they're like, they call me up like, who are you? I'm like, we got this little company in Miami. Like, why did you license that? We need that from you. I'm like, no. And but like our timing was so that was like the God bless us part, right? Sometimes you have to have the you know, you need that divine universe helping you because like that was like divine intervention. If I was 4 days late, nothing, no company. I wouldn't be here with you guys talking. So that was one of those moments where we licensed this technology, and now I have this like amazing sort of miraculous new architecture. And then I had to find someone who would be our head of robotics. So Dr. Peshkin and our friend at MIT says, go to Carnegie Mellon. There's a cool grad student named Arthur Quaid. He's a good friend of ours. So he's in perpetual grad school. He doesn't want to leave and join the real world. So I'm like, come finish your PhD and join our broke-ass company and work on this cool-ass robot. He's like, all right. And then he graduated. And I had to talk to his professor. I said, I need him. Could you please graduate him? And he was there forever, you know, kind of living the life of a good grad student. Like, you make no money, but it's fun. You're on campus. There's parties.
Right.
I'm like, we'll have parties, you know. And he did. He graduated and joined us. Everyone is completely ass broke, and we're living on fumes. But we have this cool-ass MIT robot. And I'll tell you one more totally divine intervention story, and then we'll go back to.
All right.
So we're kind of mulling around, and I'm like, how do we build this thing? And we're trying to find investors here. So I met a guy who was a huge angel investor, but he never put any money in our company. And he's like, you need something to really activate it. So we heard that there was a company in Ohio, that's where I'm originally from, that was selling its whole medical division to a British company. So the company was called Picker Imaging. They made MRI, CAT scan, X-ray. And they had a computer surgery group that was going to be sold along with it to this huge British company. It's like multi-billion-dollar deal. Mm-hmm. So I met one of the software engineers who kind of heard about what we were up to, and he didn't want to be sold because they would just kill off all this work. He says, why don't you guys buy us? I'm like, we're living in a grad apartment. We have no money. So this angel investor flies with me to Ohio. We sit down, and next thing I know, we are the owners of that division. It was like a $100 million division for some equity in our new company. That was like a miracle. I can't really explain that one. But think of it this way, this huge company is being sold, and they're looking at all their assets. In this multi-billion-dollar deal, this $100 million computer surgery group was going to go out with the trash. They thought it was a dead thing, and no one would ever care about computer surgery. They were just going to sweep it out with the trash. So the angel investor said, if you're going to throw it away, why not give it to them for some stock? It'll save you the trouble of putting it in the dustbin. Mm-hmm. So suddenly we have this, and then I'm getting a call from J&J, who was going to hire me some years back before I did this thing. They're like, why are you sitting on top of all of our spine surgeries? Because apparently these systems are around the United States doing spine surgery, which I didn't even know when we acquired this thing. Uh-huh. So suddenly I'm getting the CO J&J calling us. We got this MIT robot, and like all this stuff kind of hodgepodge together. And then investors started to show up because we were just making things happen. We were just like, it's the way I think of it is like, think about a running back running downfield, and you just got to find the opening. Mm-hmm. And everyone's trying to hit you. We're rolling and spinning and like nothing was stopping us going backwards and forwards, but nothing stopped us. And somehow we followed the way forward, which we had to feel our way forward. There was no Harvard Business School business plan for this. All right. It was completely like miracle after miracle, but we found our way. I don't know if that makes sense, but when I've talked to some founders who've done some great things, they have very similar stories. They're just like riding the river down the mountain.
So you hear a lot of times people give advice saying that, hey, follow your passion. Was this passion or was this opportunity? What was this?
I think it was more Zen than that. It was like I had stuff I loved and believed in doing, and then it's going to sound silly, but it's like, it's like Star Wars. You have to feel the force pulling you in the right direction. Like when you feel it, you just know it, and when you don't feel it, you also know it. Like it's just walls, every door shuts. And for a while, I just felt like I could feel where the force was going. It sounds really odd, but it really was that. It was just like this was happening. And you get your mind open to that. Like when you shut your mind down, you're getting too rational, analytical, you miss that, right? But when you have that, you're really tuned in to what's happening. It's really the subconscious part of your brain that's a lot more active, picking up all these signals that the conscious part of your brain can't quite detect. So I was using a lot of that and feeling the way forward. And all the advice people were giving me were completely wrong. So you can ignore me too, but it was really feeling your way forward, and then taking a step and being conscious about it and rational. But then like, let's just keep going. Like, let's not question sometimes that this path is opening up. And I felt like we were on the right path. I think part of it was we started a company to help people. Like our goal was, if we do this, we could democratize surgery. We're going to make surgery much less painful. It's going to change the world by doing something good. And I feel like if you harness yourself to doing something good, the universe is going to open up doors for you. If you harness yourself to doing something bad, I think other doors will open, and that's not the path I took.
So what's the foundation of your ideology, and what supported you in making these decisions? Because you're talking about like Super Bowl level coaching, like decision making, right? Real time.
Yeah.
So how can these entrepreneurs in this room make the proper decision so that they can reach the success that they want to reach?
First of all, I think you have to have your inner voice. Like you have to make contact with that inner voice that knows what's right and wrong. And I think if you don't have that, you just have noise and people telling you things. So you need to go to a quiet place and figure that out. And like, do I actually know what's right and wrong and why I'm doing something? So your purpose of why you're doing this company is like, I just want to make a lot of money and drive a big Mercedes. Okay, I don't think that's going to go anywhere. It's like, what is my purpose? Does my purpose have a meaning to be in the world, right? So if you harness yourself to an idea that's bigger than yourself, that has real purpose, I think that's the first step, and you feel like that's an unstoppable good purpose. First of all, a lot of people then want to help. Like, that's how I got team members on board. Like, that's great. Like, that's a good mission. We do want to help people at scale and make this something that could be available all over the world and do something good. So that was such a great way to recruit people, and even people to work for very little money, long hours, because it wasn't, hey, we're all going to make a quick buck doing crypto. We're actually going to help people's moms and dads and brothers and sisters do something very important, right? So that was such a big reason why people joined us. We had a very important purpose, a very important mission. I think that was the core, and you have to have your inner voice, and then you have to really look at the people around you. Go, do they know what they're talking about? Is the advice I'm getting good, or are they trying to take something from me? I think of them as like vampires who are sucking things away from you, and there's people that give you this like good energy and like, I'm really helping you. And if your voice is not there, you don't know the difference. You're going to get pulled into all kinds of nonsense. But if you feel that, you start to surround yourself by the right people. It's probably not the talk you guys were expecting.
No. This is wisdom. We're trying to get your wisdom. How you all? You enjoying it? Okay. Awesome. So, was the acquisition of this division the spark that made the acquisition of your company happen, or was it something else? What was that?
No. It's like a day-long story, but I'll give you the short version.
Okay.
The short version we had.
You have a day? You got okay.
We had these Lego blocks sitting around. This was at Mako Surgical, of pieces, and a couple brilliant people. We had less than 10 brilliant people made it all happen. So at the core of it was this guy Arthur, who was brilliant, this guy Louis, who was a brilliant software person. We recruited this guy Hosig, who was like a genius, samurai level robot person. Not many other people really were at the core of it, right? There were ultimately hundreds of people in the company, but that core solved almost everything. And then we set about to solve an impossible NASA level problem, right? Which is, how do you do surgery through a tiny hole? And then we found out that the body part would be moving, which almost everyone said you could never do that. Robots can't work on moving body parts. You have to hold things in place. You can't have people near robots because they have to be in cages because they're going to hit you and kill you. And we also had to invent a field called haptics, which was force feedback, where the robot actually feels like it's floating and then gives you force feedback about where it is, which was a theory in a book and no one had ever done it. So we had like 20 crazy problems to solve at the same time with no money and like 4 or 5 people. But nobody knew any different. Nobody knew that we weren't supposed to solve these problems. So if you look back at why Apollo worked, 1962 to 1970 in Cape Canaveral, not far away, nobody told them you're not supposed to be able to go to the moon. So if the engineers, a lot of them were young, under 30, and they all believed they can do it. And no one who was around who said we can't do it. Everyone was like, we could do it. And we had that attitude of, yeah, we could solve this problem. We don't know how yet, but we're just going to solve it. And that was like this really intense problem-solving mode where no one was focused on what we could not do. Everyone was focused on what we could do. So when we had I'll tell you one crazy thing. One of our early angel investors was telling me at some point, fire all the robot people. I'm like, that's everybody in the company, because that's a stupid idea. And I'm like, but you invested in this company. And I said, I didn't say yes, I just nodded. I acknowledged what you just said to me, but I'm not going to acknowledge that I'm doing it. And they said, I'm going to come back in 6 months, let's see your progress. I'm like, you're just an idiot. So I hid them in the closet when the investors would come by, the robot team. And then one time, I literally hid them in the closet. And then one time they came by, and I said, I got to show you something. I pulled the robot team out of the closet, like 4 or 5 guys. And we had the robot doing the miraculous stuff we said it would do. And first of all, they were like really angry. We told you to fire those guys. I'm like, shh, try this. And they're like, oh my God, that's magic. And from that moment on, they were like, "Oh my God, how did you guys pull that off?" It was like complete magic. And then we started to get real funding. We started to streak towards, like, I would say our first surgery, which is a miracle. And then we had to go through the hell of 2008, which was stock market crash when we went public. During the stock market crash, we were the only companies to have a successful IPO in 2008, where bankers were jumping out of windows and we were on Wall Street saying we should go public. And people were like literally about to kill themselves, and we're like, "But no, please wait a minute. You should fund us because you have a bad knee and it's going to hurt when you hit the pavement." So we had like a lot of really lots of really hard things. Like, think about, if you're a founder, going public is like going to the Super Bowl. And I was like so excited. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm going to the Super Bowl. The stock market's crashing.
Mm-hmm.
And then like a week before we're supposed to go public, my dad died. I'm just thinking, this is the worst set of things, but I just had to get through it, and we were one of the only successful IPOs that year. Nobody goes public then. So when I tell you guys about, like, you have to be like really determined, the level of like not Terminator level, going through walls, your favorite running back knocking over everyone on the way to goal line, you have to have that attitude. But you have to be agile, right? If you keep going to this wall without changing direction, so the agility and the determination, I think, is really key if you want to be a successful founder.
So what was the name of that book? The haptics book.
The haptics book?
Yeah, you said you read it in a book about haptics, this idea, this concept. Because I love reading. I love books, right? So
a guy named Ken Salisbury, he was a professor at MIT, and now he's a professor at Stanford. He was one of the inventors of what's the intuitive Da Vinci surgical system. And if you look up Google Ken Salisbury and haptics, he was like an early thought leader and wrote lots of papers and some textbooks on the idea of haptics. Haptics is like, how do you create virtual touch, like things that don't exist, but you can feel them. And the whole field of haptics is kind of a really crazy, almost magical sounding field. And he theorized that haptics were possible. And there was an MIT lab called the Artificial Intelligence Lab at MIT that was working on robots, haptics, AI. And if you Google Ken Salisbury, he was the advisor to Bill Townsend. And they designed a robot that should be able to do haptics. That was the theory. And we made that robot do haptics by redesigning every single part of it to become a different robot. So the funny thing is, the MIT robot we licensed, we had to change all of it in order to make it the real, which is what Mako uses today. But we learned a lot from that first thing, and then migrating it from what it wasn't doing right to what it did do right taught us everything, and we were the best in the world in that field. To the point where a guy named Fred Moll, who's like one of the most famous robot founders in the world, he founded Intuitive Surgical. It's a $100 billion company. He founded another company that got sold for about $5 billion to J&J a few years ago. He became one of our early investors because he said haptics can't be done because they tried to do it at Intuitive. And I said, come to Mako. He put his hand on it. He's like, oh, shit. Okay, I'll be an investor. And he became a board member, and now he's still a friend. Because he was sure it couldn't be done. And I'm like, if you're so sure, come down. And in 2 seconds, we didn't talk about it. We just showed him. Nice. By the way, that's really key. You have got to put up. If you have your idea, you've got to make it real. And that was the saving grace of Mako. We actually made stuff that people could not comprehend was possible. And that was that leap that got everyone behind us. Because I'd sit there and describe some of these things, and they're like, that's nonsense. I'm like, go over there, put your hand on it, try it. I'm like, oh, okay. Everything I just said was wrong. And now my worldview has changed. And I really think that's what investors and your future employees want. They want to go somewhere and have their eyes opened to something that is new and different and changes the world forever. Once you see that, taste it, experience it, whatever it is, that's life-changing. That's what you want to aim for as a founder.
So make theory real and don't hire engineers over 30.
Well, I don't want to be ageist. I would say that there's a mentality, right? I think the mentality is you could be 75 and think fluidly. You could be 22 and be rigid, like a really, really old person. So I think it's not The age is what's my fluidity, my openness, my ability to be creative and innovative, what's going on there.
Let's close it out with your evaluation of the current AI landscape and where do you think it should be going and what we should be thinking about and considering.
I think it's a great question, especially for founders here. So let me start at the very top and work down. We were talking about this before we started talking. So the global economy is somewhere between 110, 120 trillion dollars. It's huge. And imagine that between now through 2035, a big part of that is going to transform and become AI driven. That's actually scary and opportunistic and all these things all at once. So there's so much investment in AI. Basically, AI is like computing that's surpassing us, right? There's a lot of terms, like AI is no longer a meaningful term. It's just like, I think of it as like, computing intelligence is this form of underlying energy that we've built as people that is going to change almost every single business on the planet. And it's probably the single biggest market outside of just energy that you could possibly be involved in. And I'm trying to think any business you do is going to be touched by AI. So either it's going to happen to you and hurt your business, or you leverage it and it drives your business. So I think the current marketplace are a few giant companies who are trying to dominate it. Microsoft, Google, Meta, Amazon will get in the game. And I think their view is we're going to suck all data and all know-how into our super brain and basically run the entire economy. That's this $100 trillion thing. It'll all come to us. That's why they're worth right now $2-3 trillion, because Wall Street thinks they're on a beeline to basically take a big portion of that. The fundamental flaw I think they've got is that the idea of a super brain seems unnatural. And what's happening right now with AI, 2 of the 3 fathers of current modern AI, there's a guy named Yoshua Bengio at McGill University, Jeff Hinton, who just quit Google, and there's a guy named Jan LeCun, who's still at Meta Facebook. 2 of the 3 have come out and said, I think we built a monster. We built some kind of Oppenheimer, 3 Mile Island, destructive thing. And what's really true about what they're saying is these gigantic brains that we're building are unknowable. We don't know why they work really. We fill them up with data and they start working. They're not reliable. They fluctuate. They hallucinate. They do all kinds of chaotic things. And you think how much of the economy, government, healthcare, aerospace, military is going to be hooked up to these gigantic things. So there's going to be an enormous opportunity for designing other ways to do this. Ways that harness computing in safe, usable ways. And I like to think of it as like the big companies are building like the nuclear reactors, but you could build solar farms, wind farms, sustainable, safe, human and AI that we could live together for hundreds of years, not AI taking over everything. And I think of it like, what movie did you watch, right? I think these guys watched 2001 and Hal kills everybody. And I'm like, why did you go build that? That's literally what they saw, like one movie and decided to go build that thing. There's other things that should be influencing how they see AI. And I think computing can be a much friendlier, human integrated thing where we control it, we understand it, it does what we need. This is the time right now to harness that future. I told Derek earlier, the biggest change in computing is the next 10 to 15 years. You're going to build companies so much bigger than Microsoft and Google. So if you are building something, think about how AI will transform your industry, how you can do something with it. And to give you an inspirational story, a friend of mine, this guy named David Holtz, he founded a thing called Midjourney. He's sitting in his apartment in San Francisco, self-funded, wasn't a lot of capital. And he's got this little band of like, I don't know, less than 10 people they started with. Didn't take really VC money and has now built one of the most important AI companies with a fraction of the compute and a fraction of the money of the big companies. And he's doing really good things because he did not need the huge river of money to be clever. Mm-hmm. And his company's now like revenue generating and profitable. So you don't need to be Microsoft to compete with them. And if you play with Midjourney, it's actually amazing how high quality the output is. So it's an example of like, he's not like 1,000 people, right? He's not like OpenAI that's got $20 billion. He's got very little capital, yet he's doing great things. So I feel like there's so much computing power. There's so much available tools and open source things to play with. Mm-hmm. If you just lean in, you can actually build something.
Thank you. Thank you. Give Rony a round of applause, everyone. Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank Derek for inviting us and for having the center. It's amazing. Derek was a fellow at Magic Leap, and he was talking all these great things. And I'm just so impressed with what he's done, what Felicia's done, and just what you. I'm ashamed it's my first time here, even though I've been a big supporter. I love what you guys are doing. I think this is such a cool and important place, and hopefully you'll be here a lot more.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure.